Actually, if I never invested another dollar again, my $135,000 portfolio would still grow into over $1 million in my lifetime, and that is even at normal market returns. But I am going to be investing. I am not stopping. So today, I am showing you exactly how I am investing, what I am holding, and how this portfolio is positioned to grow to $1 million. So before we jump into the video and break down the portfolio, what is your portfolio currently at? Comment down below. I would love to hear. So just giving a quick recap right now, I am 27 years old. I like to keep my investing style very simple and transparent, and I even document this on my road to $1 million net worth series. So feel free to check that out if you want to see it on a recurring basis, but honestly, my goal is just to build as much wealth as possible, and because I have now hit the 100K mark, I am kind of on that road to $1 million. Now, obviously, there are milestones along the way, but hitting that $1 million mark just sounds so amazing. And the way I am going to do that is through very simple investing that is consistent and just grows steadily over a long period of time. I am not trying to hit $1 million in 3 months or 6 months. I am just trying to invest as much as possible, and I am letting time and compound interest play its part. Now, just a reminder here, I am not a financial advisor. This is not financial advice. This is just my strategy and how I invest and what seems to work best for me. So I want to actually show you guys the math behind turning $135,000 into $1 million, or even just if I stopped investing today, what would that look like? So my portfolio right now is a little over $135,000, but then let us assume that the market gets 10% a year. Let us assume inflation is 2%, so the real return there is actually 8% a year. So if I do not put any money in at all, and I just let the $135,000 grow at 8% a year, and I do that for 33 years, which would mean I would be 60 years old if I did not put any money in, the value at that point would be $1.7 million, which is pretty awesome. Because that just tells me I am going to become a millionaire even if I do not keep investing. But the reality is $1.7 million 30 plus years from now is not going to be enough money to retire. So let us just change the one variable in the scenario that we have, and that is the contribution. So instead of doing $0 invested a month, let us do $1,000 invested a month, and then let us wait 33 years at 8%. Then that $1.7 million would actually be $3.46 million. So that is definitely looking a lot better. Once you are in that $3 to $5 million range, I think that is going to be a very good place to be. And I am even factoring in inflation when I say that. I do think you could retire on $3 to $4 million a couple decades from now. Again, we do not know what inflation is going to look like, but let us assume between 2 to 3% a year. So that is if I invest $1,000 a month, which would be 12 grand a year. But let us pretend I am investing $2,000 a month, and then I wait 33 years at 8%. That would be $5.2 million. So that is extremely motivating because if I invest a ton of money every month, I am talking 3 or 4 or 5 grand, and if I could get to that point, then we are talking more like between $5 to $10 million in 30 plus years, which sounds awesome to me, but I also do not want to work for another 33 years. If I could retire sooner, I absolutely would take that, and so in order to do that, I do need to invest more money. And over this past year or so, I have invested about $2.5 thousand a month, which would be about $30,000 a year. So if I continue to do that and I invest $30,000 a year, it would take me about 13 years to get to $1 million. And again, I am 27. So that would mean by the time I am 40, the portfolio would cross $1 million. But I honestly want to hit $1 million before that. So I am trying to invest more and more money each year because I want to hit that $1 million portfolio as soon as possible. Then we are going to get to $2 million, and it is only going to get quicker and quicker. But the main thing I do want to point out here is whether you are 27 years old and you have a ton of money in the market, or you are 20 and you are just getting started. The earlier you start, the less money that you need to contribute to get to that million. So somebody that wants to hit $1 million, if they are starting at age 30 and they want to be a millionaire, by let us say age 45 or age 50, they are going to have to invest a lot more money than somebody who is starting at age 20 that wants to become a millionaire by 40 or 45 or 50. So the earlier you start, the better. That is one of the main things when it comes to compound interest. Anybody that comments on my videos and is like, yeah, I am starting at 19 or 20 years old, I am literally sitting there thinking, you are way ahead of everybody else, you are killing it. And also one thing to point out is the percentage increase that you need to move up $100,000 becomes smaller and smaller over time. So for example, if you have a $100,000 portfolio and you want it to go to $200,000, then that would mean you would need your portfolio to increase by 100%. Now, I am not saying it needs a 100% return, but I am saying your money has to double, basically, like going from 100 to 200, but then going from 200 to 300, you only need a 50% increase. And then that number is just getting smaller and smaller. So by the time you are at, let us say, $900,000, your portfolio only needs to go up by 11%. Then you are at $1 million. So the hardest part of investing is that first I would say about $500,000. $0 to $500,000 is going to take way longer than $500,000 to $1 million, which is why I've made so many videos talking about trying to get to that 100K mark, because it does start to accelerate pretty quickly. And I have even noticed that myself this year, just going from 100 to 135. For me, I think I hit $100,000 right around the end of April. beginning of May, and I am already at $135,000 a little bit over 6 months later. So it does really start to pick up. So when it comes to the math of getting to $1 million, the main message I want you guys to take away here is you do not need a ton of risk to grow and to get there. You really just need consistency and time. And if you can find different ways to either try to cut expenses every year, or maybe make a little bit more money. And if you can invest more money every single month, like if you were to just take a monthly average each year, if that is slowly going up over time, you are doing a very good job. That is what I try to do personally. So that is the math behind getting to $1 million or even getting to a couple $1,000,000. Now, let us actually take a look at the full portfolio breakdown. So I want to start out by breaking down my positions here. So like I said, the portfolio is a little bit over $135,000. Out of that $135,000, $98,000 of it is in VOO, or the S&P 500. Now, VO is just Vanguard ETF that tracks the S&P 500. But I do have a 401k, and all of my money in that goes into the S&P 500. So I do basically a calculation to convert it into what that would look like if I was holding VOO. Because again, it is just the same thing. It is all the S&P 500 at the end of the day. So out of that 135k, $98,000, or about 72.6% of that is VU, or the S&P 500, exact same thing. And then $24,000 of it is SHD. This is a dividend growth ETF. This gives me some pretty consistent cash flow that is going to be growing very steadily over a long period of time, and that is 18.1% of my portfolio. And then finally, we have VUG, which is just Vanguard Growth ETF. This is basically just a tech-focused ETF, and that is about $12,620, or about 9.3% of my portfolio. So as you can see, the S&P 500 definitely makes up most of my portfolio. One of my goals is by the end of this year to get that position to $100,000. I definitely think we will get there by the end of December, so fingers crossed there, but again, we will just have to see how the market looks when we get there. And one thing I did want to mention is before I owned a lot of individual stocks, and I recently converted that into all ETFs back in August of this year. And since then, I have only been just investing in VUO. So every time I get paid, I am putting some money into my 401k. And any other money that I am investing is going straight into VU, and I have already maxed out my Roth IRA for the year. So then I am putting all of that money in the brokerage right now, but once we hit 2026, then I can contribute to the Roth again, and I will definitely be maxing that out as soon as possible. So that is the breakdown of my individual positions. Now, if we were to break down the brokerage, the Roth, and the 401k. So if we are looking at the brokerage here, that is currently worth $68,747. Out of that $68,000, $48,000 of that is VO, $13,800 is SEG, and then $6,000. A little bit over that is VUG. So out of the $135,000, the brokerage is definitely the largest. It is about 50.8% of my total investments. So that is the brokerage. And then looking at my Roth IRA total, that is currently at $39,915, $22,000 of that is VOO, $10,000 is CHD, and then $6,400 is VUG. And one thing I did want to point out is with the Roth IRA or a traditional IRA, you can only put so much money in each year. So the brokerage is always going to be way larger because I can invest $50,000 in a single year into the brokerage compared to the Roth. That maxes out at about $7,000 this year, but next year that did get increased to $7,500. So that will be nice to see there. Just a little bump in the contributions. So that is the brokerage total. The Roth makes up about 29.5%. So pretty much 30% of my total investments. And then finally, the 401k, like I said, that is all in the S&P 500. That is worth $26,665, and that is about 20% of my total investment. Now, one thing that will be interesting if I do an update on this next year is I do think the 401k is going to go up because my 401k match will kick in next year. So if I put in, let us say $6,000, the company will match $6,000, which will be really nice because right now I am not getting that match until I work at the company for a certain amount of time. So that will be pretty cool once that gets kicked in there. So if you add up the brokerage of $68,700, you add up the Roth of that $39,000 number, and then you add up the 401k, the $26,000 number, that gets us back to the $135,327. So that is an actual breakdown of my individual holdings and the ETFs I hold. Again, I only hold 3 positions, so I keep it very simple. Because the S&P 500 is the 500 largest companies, and then SHD is a more value dividend focused ETF, and that is going to hold a lot of different value stocks, but I am getting pretty good cash flow on that. And then VUG gives me that tech concentration, which kind of makes up for the lack of capital appreciation that I get from SAG. And when I say capital appreciation, All I am saying is the stock price going up because tech has been just killing it the past 3 or 4 or 5 years. And so the reason I chose this allocation is because I really like the S&P 500. I love just owning the 500 largest companies in the US. I think it is a very good way of just building wealth long term, and I want to have a majority of my portfolio in that. Now, the reason I do not go super in on tech, like the reason VUG is not 50% of my portfolio, is because the market goes through different bull runs, and a bull run is when the market is having consecutive years of going up. So for example, if you look at like the late 90s, 1995 to 1999, tech stocks absolutely killed it. But if you own tech stocks between the year 2000 and then you held it for 12 years until 2011 or 2012, tech stocks did not do very good because we had the dot-com bubble in the early 2000s as well as the '08 crash. So basically value stocks were a lot better then. And the nice thing about the S&P 500 is it is entirely focused on market cap. So basically the largest companies will take up the largest percentage of the S&P 500. And right now that is tech stocks. But if tech were to rotate out and value were to become really big again, then those stocks would then become a larger percentage of the S&P 500. So that is the main reason that I love VU, and it is also a super low cost ETF. It is very hands off. And the reality is a lot of financial advisors just underperform the S&P 500 anyway. So if you cannot beat them, join them, which is the main reason I put a lot of money into that. So that explains VU there. Now, the reason that I own SHE is because I love the dividend cash flow. I love seeing the dividends come in every quarter. I am getting quite a bit of money from them at this point. It is normally over $200 a quarter, which is pretty cool. And all I do is just reinvest that right back into SHD, which will then pay me more each quarter. So that is just going to be steadily going up over time. And SHG also holds quite a few value stocks. So again, if we rotate out of tech back into value, then SHD will do really well. And also SHD plays a little bit of defense in my portfolio. So for example, if we see the market drop 30 or 40% in a single year, I can almost bet anything that SHD will drop less than the S&P 500 because it is a value ETF. So if the market drops, let us say 30%, I bet SHD only drops between 10 to 15%, but also if the market goes up 25%, SHD will not go up as much. So it is a lot more conservative play there. And so that leads me to my last position, which is VUG. I am kind of using VUG to offset the conservative defensive nature of SHD because VUG is very tech focused. So if tech does continue to do well, then the S&P 500 will do well, but also VUG is going to kill it. So honestly, it is just a really nice balance of all three, and I am definitely going to be sticking to it long term. The reason I like to keep it simple here is because I am paying very low amount in fees, and that is just the expense ratio. Nobody is managing my money. I am doing it myself. It is all passive index funds and ETFs. It is very simple. The next reason I am doing this is because it has a proven market track record. All of these ETFs, like I said, they are low fees. You can go look at their historical returns. They have done very good over a 10 or 15 year period. I know CHD was founded, I think, in 2011, so just under 15 years, but still all of them have a really good track record. So those are two of the reasons. The next reason I keep it simple is because I can basically just automate it and forget it. Like every time I go to invest, it is very simple. I really do not put much energy into it. I am not sitting there analyzing, oh, is it undervalued? Is it overvalued? I am just dollar cost averaging very consistently over a long period of time. And I really just think this method just works great for people in their 20s, especially if you are trying to find different ways of scaling your income and you are really trying to allocate your time elsewhere. And so I feel like having a simple investing style is only going to make your life easier, because if you have 50 plus stocks and you are constantly keeping track of their earnings and all these different things going on, it just seems like a real headache, and the reality is you are probably going to underperform the market. Anyways, maybe you do not underperform at year 1 or year 2, but over a 5 or 10 year period, there is a good chance you will. So that is why I keep it simple. And then in regards to my contribution strategy, all I do is I basically just get paid. I look at all of my expenses that I need to save up for, I give myself a little bit of a cushion, and then I invest the rest. It is really just that simple for me. There are no real rules that I follow. I do not hold a lot of cash on the side. Do not get me wrong, I have an emergency fund, but that is for emergencies. Besides that, I try to just be investing as much as possible as soon as possible, and I am just dollar cost averaging over a long period of time. I am not sitting there holding cash waiting to lump sum if the market drops 20%, because the reality is the market could run up another 60 or 70 or 80+%, and then it drops 10 or 20%. I do not want to be that guy just sitting on the sidelines. I want my money going out and making me more money as soon as possible. So that is my contribution strategy. Now, in regards to my strategy for reaching $1 million, the first thing and one of the biggest things that I follow is having a high savings rate. This is the real thing that is going to help you over a long period of time. If you are saving 20 or 30%, maybe even 40% of your take-home pay over time as you start to make more and more money, this is like the engine that is actually doing all the heavy lifting for you. And then over time, the compound interest will do a lot more heavy lifting, but starting out getting that 0 to 100K or 0 to 500K, it is going to be very dependent on how much you are investing. So having a high savings rate is definitely important. Making sure you are trying to keep your expenses in check. You have got to be just on top of that stuff. The next rule I follow is just investing every single month, every single paycheck, no matter what. I try to never get myself into a position where I am not investing. It is one of the most important things I would say the past couple years for me. It is something I constantly am prioritizing, and I will never let something get in the way of that. Because for me, if I want to reach my goals and become successful, I have got to be investing consistently. And then the third thing here is just to keep the portfolio as boring as possible. I am not sitting there, like I said, with 50 plus stocks trying to look at earnings, looking at all this different stuff. Is it undervalued? Is it overvalued? I just buy the ETFs and I do not even have to think about it. And even if the market drops 30 or 40% over the next year or two, I am not worried at all. I am just going to keep investing no matter what. So those are a couple rules I follow, and that is my strategy for reaching $1 million. But the other thing is that I have a win-win mindset when it comes to investing. And I even talked about this in a recent video, which is talking about the psychology of investing. Feel free to check that out if you want to. But basically, this is the logic that I use. I put money into the market, and either the market goes up or it goes down. If the market goes up, then that is great. My wealth is growing, and that is going to make me want to invest more money because I want my money to grow as quickly as possible. So that is the first option. The second option, though, is that I put money in and the market goes down, which, yeah, it sucks. I lost a little bit of money short term, but I now get the opportunity to buy VO or SHD or VUG on a discount. So that $1,000 that I invested a month ago, it is now going further for me because instead of buying only one share of something, it is going to be buying maybe 1.2 shares or 1.5 shares. So I am buying more shares for cheaper, which is really nice. So that is the way I view it. It is really just a win-win. Either you buy the dip and you are buying things on a discount, or you put money in and your wealth grows and you are making a lot of money. So either way, you are basically winning, especially if you are investing long-term. And when people are fearful, that is the time to be greedy. And that is a Warren Buffett quote that I definitely stick to. And then the next thing here in regards to my strategy for reaching $1 million is the next 100K is going to be faster than the last. And like I said before, it is those percentage increases. So to go from $100,000 to $200,000, that is a 100% increase, but then it is a 50% increase to get the next 100K, then 33%, then 25%. It just gets easier and easier. So the compounding is really going to start taking effect once you hit that, I would say, 100K mark, and it is only going to get quicker over time. Which is why I feel like I am trying to sprint to 200K and sprint to 300K, because I know by the time I hit 500 or 600K, it is going to be just moving very quickly. The next thing that will help me get that next 100K quicker than the last is the fact that just your income should increase as you age. Somebody that is 30 years old should be making more money than when they were 22. And somebody that is 35 hopefully is making more money than when they were 30. So as your income increases and assuming your savings rate is the same, then you will just be investing more money. It is that simple. Somebody that makes 100K a year and invests, let us say 20% of their income, that is 20 grand. But if that goes up to 150K over a period of 3 to 5 years, then that jumps from 20 grand to 30 grand. So then you are investing more and more each year. Another reason why I believe this next 100K will be quicker than the last is just me investing a lot more money. I am investing way more money now than I was when I was 22 or 23 or 24 years old. So that definitely makes it a lot easier when your income is increasing over time. And also the last thing I've got to say is that time multiplies every decision you make today. When you spend $100 on something when you are 20 years old, that $100 is worth way more money by the time you are 60 compared to if you are 55 years old and you spend 100 by the time you are 60. It is not going to be that much different. And so every decision you make when you are in your early to mid 20s is actually really impactful. And I think a lot of people do not realize that. So that is my strategy for reaching $1 million. Now let us talk about the future and what I am working towards. So one of the first things and the obvious thing here is trying to increase my income over time, because then I can invest more money. So one way of doing this is by trying to get promoted at work, trying to find different ways to make money on the side if I can. And that is something I do want to get better at over the next year, is finding different side hustles or, ways to develop passive income, because I do think it is really nice. But at the end of the day, there is no such thing as passive income. I feel like no matter what, you either have to invest money or you have to invest time, or you have to work hard to build something which will then pay you passive income. So finding ways to increase my income, which will help me then invest more money, is really important for me over these next couple of years. And then the next thing, this is more of a long-term thing, not as much in the 20s or 30s, but maybe in my 40s, is adjusting my portfolio as I grow. So once I get closer to retirement, I am probably going to have a lot more money in a dividend ETF like SHD because I do not want to take on as much risk. If you have a portfolio that is worth $3 or $4 or $5 million, you really do not want to see your portfolio drop 30 or 40% in a single year, especially if you are going to retire soon. So you definitely want to adjust the amount of risk you are taking as you get closer to retirement or whatever that number is for you. So I definitely want to be conscious of that. But in the meantime, I am going to stay very heavily into VOU, at least in my 20s and 30s. In my 40s, we will just have to see what my number is at and kind of go from there. So I also want to make it very clear here. I am not trying to brag or flex at the end of the day. There is always going to be somebody that has more money than you or is doing better than you. All you have to do is just focus on yourself and how you are progressing over time. And I really hope this video motivates you guys, because once you get that first 100K and it really starts to take off, it can do very well, especially within a year or two. And if you are investing more and more money each year, you are going to see really great results over a 5 or 10 or 20-year period. And try to think about things long term. Do not think about the next 3 months or 6 months or year. Try to think about the next 5 to 10 years and what that could look like and how you can get yourself into a really good financial position. So that is a full breakdown of my $135,000 portfolio. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, drop a like down below, hit that subscribe button. I will see you in the next one. Peace. Actually, it is quite a journey we are on together, is it not? Just taking it one step at a time, breathing through the noise, and letting our future selves thank us for the quiet choices we make today. There is so much power in the simple act of showing up for yourself, no matter the amount. Every little bit is a seed planted in a garden that will one day provide you with all the shade you need. I am just so glad to be here sharing this space with you and watching our collective strength grow. It is not about being perfect, it is just about being here. Let us keep that warmth in our hearts as we navigate the world of finance together. It is our story, and we get to write it with kindness and patience. See you soon.